This is part one of a series I'm doing on how to make games, and I'll talk about getting and developing ideas. But before I start, I just want to mention that my goal in this series is to help you to make a playable game that other people enjoy. It took me probably 20 years of trying to make games in one way or another before I finally made games that were getting out there and people were having fun with them. And I had a hard time finding good resources, good books, or good articles on the internet that really gave me a step-by-step to get started. So that's what I'm trying to do in this video series. The games that I have made, most of them that are being played right now are board and card games. I make party games and social games. If you were to go to boardgamegeek.com, it's a great online resource, you would see several games that I have made. Not all of them have been well received, but I have several titles there that you could see my type of work. My most popular games have been Take Your Pick by Simply Fun, Oh Really by Find It, and the previous version of Oh Really, which was called What's It To Ya. I have been recently working on some games on Stencyl. You could play them on Stencyl Arcade. They're classroom games or creativity games that you could use in education, and I have adapted several games for interactive whiteboards so teachers could play these in class. So, to my practical tips, the most important thing I can tell you is if you want to make games, start a game design notebook. Now I say notebook, but basically get some sort of notebook or file where you are putting all your ideas. If you get an idea for a game, if something looks fun, if something sounds like it might be fun or it might be a neat rule, write it down. Save everything, and that'll get you in the habit of thinking that way. When I was working on games the most, I had a 200-page Word document that was just filled with ideas and thoughts about games. Out of those 200 pages, very few of those games actually got out to the world, but it took that many ideas and tidbits to form those games that actually got out there. Remember that ideas are really everywhere. I think sometimes we get too locked on our ideas. Ideas are like air. I remember a writer that spoke to our students one time said it's like air. It's everywhere. You just have to be aware of them. So here are my tips on where you can get some ideas. This is where I get ideas. First of all, learn many games. Whatever type of games you like, play them as much as possible. Play some games that you don't like, that aren't necessarily your favorite style, but learn from them. This would count video games, sports. Just learn as many games as you can. Maybe you'll actually play them, or maybe you'll just read the rules online. I used to spend many hours just reading rules, learning all the fun things that people can do with rules and bits and mechanics. Pay attention to the world around you. My game, What's It To Ya, possibly the one that's reached more people than any other, it came from a quote from Einstein. I read this quote. He wasn't talking about games, but when I read that quote, it sounded neat, and I thought maybe a game could come from that. And eventually it developed into that. So just pay attention to everything, and if you're thinking games when you're seeing other things, you might find a neat connection that no one else has thought of yet. Think of different starting points. Don't always think about what you like in a game. If you like having lots of little plastic figures to play with, and you always think of plastic figures to play with, your games will start to look the same. Try to think of different starting points like rules, or if you really like the rules of a game, try coming at it from a different theme. Maybe you could think of a theme you like, and if a game would develop from that. So just different starting points. And kind of along with that, I just want to say imagine. Imagine what doesn't exist. My friend Corey Heath makes some great games, and he said his technique is to sit down and think about the game that he wants to play right then, but he can't because it doesn't exist. I like to look at a group of people, maybe a group that I don't usually hang out with, and think, what kind of game could I walk up and show them that they would want to play? And from there, I'll get some core ideas. Once you have a good idea, once there's something that you've thought of that you really like and you think it could be a game and it excites you enough that it's going to carry you through the process, you got to get focused on that idea. So here are two things I would suggest that you do. List your design goals. First of all, think about why you want to make this game. It's really the guiding question as you're going to work through possibly weeks and months of development. Why do you want to make that game? Is it for a certain person, or is it to achieve something new that you haven't seen in a game or that you haven't done in a game? List your goals and then identify who it's for. Who is going to find that game fun? There probably will never be a game that everyone will find fun. There will be one group that says it's fun and another group that would say it was very boring and not entertaining. So the key to know if you have a fun game is to know very well who you want to have fun playing it. Then let the game develop in your notebook. At the end of a busy work week, this was a very relaxing experience for me to just go through my notebook and let the ideas develop. So I would read down my ideas, and this would be my list of ideas I was actually working on, not just rough ideas, but maybe I'd have 5 games that I was actually developing at any one time. And I would just think, okay, where am I at in the process on this game? I know what the cards look like, and I know how many cards I'm going to have. What would be the next thing that I need to think about? And I just jot down some notes. It's a very pleasing process. So describe and sketch the elements of your game. Maybe you need to sketch out what the cards will actually look like, what the pieces look like, or the board looks like. Describe what people are going to be doing, or what they're going to have in front of them at the table, or if this is a computer game, what would be on the screen. Anticipate problems. When you've played a lot of games, this will become more and more easy to do, but you want to anticipate where players are going to run into trouble, where your gold tokens are going to run out, for example, or you're going to anticipate that everybody's going to be crowding around to guard the goal, and that's going to make the game very unfun, or that someone's going to be eliminated from the game at some point. You anticipate those problems just by thinking it out and playing it in your head. Then you come up with solutions to those problems. And describe the flow of the game. In your notebook, write down what a person does in a turn. When does the game end? How does it start? Get the flow developed before you even play it, and your playtesters will appreciate that. You're going to often wonder, is it worth pursuing? Or maybe you should wonder if it's worth pursuing. So here are some questions to ask yourself. Always be asking yourself what makes it unique. Again, this kind of goes back to your target audience, but what is it about your game that's unique enough that's going to make people want to play it? Or maybe it needs to be unique enough that you're going to want to keep working on it. What are the elements that make it very special? And if you're probably the only one that thinks those are special, it might not be worth pursuing. There are plenty of other ideas, so you can always move on to those. And then always go back to your design goals. Are you achieving those goals? Maybe the goals themselves need to be revised, but go back to that why. Change it if you need to. But if you're still achieving those goals, I think it's worth pursuing. So for the next parts, I'm going to talk about playtesting in part 2, and then part 3 would be publishing options, actually getting your game out there. Keep in mind, I'm not trying to have you make a game that makes a fortune. Remember that the goal is to make a playable game that other people will enjoy. It's a great experience for me to get on Boardgame Geek and see that in Brazil someone played my game Oh Really over the weekend, something that I created with my wife and kids at my house, and people all over the world have enjoyed it. So if that's your goal, come back when I have the other episodes up and you'll get some more tips.